Wales. Welcome to episode number 2 of The Mayor and the Manager. This is a podcast of Providence Voice that we have created for the citizens of our great city of Lake Wales to help you stay up to date on what's happening in our town and also help you become more familiar with the people who you elected and the people you pay to make the decisions that affect us. We also want to give you an opportunity to ask questions you may have about the decisions that are being made and the events that are taking place in our city. My name is Jack Hilligoss. I'm the mayor of Lake Wales, and I'm joined again in this episode by our Lake Wales City Manager, James Slaton. James, thanks for being a part of this again. In our first episode, we discussed the renaissance that we've been experiencing. A lot of talk about that great Lake Wales and connected plan and the things that we've experienced over the last several years in Lake Wales. And today, we're going to talk about a little bit more difficult, probably, subject, and that's growth management. Now, this is something every municipality in Polk County is dealing with. By now, I think everyone can recite the fact that we're the fastest growing county, or one of the fastest growing counties in the whole country. And really, that's true of the entire state. So, responding to and effectively managing that growth is a big part of it really being a renaissance and not just simply being an explosion. So some people, when they hear the word growth management, their automatic thought is stop the growth. And that's really what they want to happen. But we know that that's not possible. It isn't something that a city government can do. And honestly, it's not something we should do. Rather, good growth management is about minimizing the impacts of growth while maximizing the benefit of growth. So while it's easy to see the impacts of growth, I mean, we all know that the streets are more crowded, the highways are busier, the schools are more crowded. We all know that. But what most people may not understand is the benefits that we're reaping as a city. And since you're a city planner, that's where you live every day. Why don't you talk to us about that? Talk about the good things that are coming our way because of growth.
Great. I'll be happy to talk about that. So, without getting in too much boring government detail on some of this stuff, look, at the end of the day, we'll start with the tax base. And Lake Wales has long had some of the lowest, and oftentimes we've been the lowest in terms of average property values.
Okay. Yeah.
In the county.
Sure.
And that's just the truth. And so we get some growth. We get the new homes that, are taxed, quite honestly, at the higher rates because of the Save Our Homes Act that was, approved here in Florida back in the 90s. And so you get more homes coming in and they're contributing to your tax base. So, you got more taxes coming in, you can invest more in the community, and that lowers taxes for everyone else. You got more people, chipping in, and they're paying fees and impact fees to expand the infrastructure. So those are major benefits, but some of the other benefits are employers. When large scale employers are coming into an area community, they're looking for what's the population that they need a workforce. So that's a big factor. We've got to have population growth to bring in the right sized employers. And even on the smaller side, national, the retail employers, right? So retail's great, and retail certainly improves shopping, dining, improve the quality of life here in Lake Wales. But they all have metrics. They all have site selection criteria. And if you don't have a certain amount of rooftops within a certain radius of a location that they're maybe looking at, they're just not going to come. So the reality is, as much as people want, Targets and they, Target shopping centers, and they want Outback Steakhouses. Well, they only come if the population is dense enough within a given area.
Sure.
So while there are challenges with the growth, we've got more income. We can have, enhanced public safety services as a result. We can have, upgraded parks and streets as a result.
Sure.
As well as additional shopping, dining, and large-scale employers. So those are certainly, I think, the most significant benefits of what the growth will bring.
Yeah, when a city's growing, the complaints that we hear are it's too crowded, it's too busy, there's too many people. But when the city's not growing, you get a lot of complaints too. And typically the complaints are there are no jobs and there's nothing to do.
That's right.
So, those are the two things you talked about immediately. We know in Lake Wales has forever been citrus country, and the citrus industry has driven everything around here. It's been a great blessing, a great part of our heritage and a great blessing to our community. But the citrus industry, everyone knows, has undergone terrible travail in the last several years. And we've got to diversify our economic base. So like you were sharing, when you start trying to attract major employers, the size, the planning, the forward thinking that they see makes a big difference. So talk about some of the developments that you've seen as far as employment opportunities have come. Different companies that have already made a commitment, and also I know we've done some zoning changes. We're trying to set aside pieces of land that are ready for developers to come in. So share about that. Share about the reasons why we're doing that, and maybe even, I know there's a certain level of information you can't share, but just share with us possibilities that are out there.
Sure. So in terms of possibilities, one of the things that we've been doing, and I know for this particular city commission, economic development, prosperity it's really been a priority. Mm-hmm. It certainly has been a priority since you've been the mayor. Mm-hmm. And so what we've been working with landowners and developers to get land entitled, meaning to getting the right, zoning and industrial zoning, getting the property annexed into the city limits, and then making sure that land has utilities so that they're shovel ready. Mm-hmm. Speed to market is the most important thing right now for any business, certainly moving to Florida or even expanding. So, starting from the beginning and going through the whole process and not building for 3 years just doesn't work. They've got to be up and running and producing whatever the product is. So the more that we can get that land entitled and ready to build, the better off we're going to be. And I think we've had some success doing that.
We're certainly getting more attention than we've ever gotten before.
Definitely.
And we're and again, part of that is they would have never looked our direction 5 years ago. So that certainly is a benefit. We're hoping and believing that very soon we're going to have a lot more higher paying jobs that are closer to home here in Lake Wales. I'm very confident that that's going to happen.
I think so as well, Mayor. We've got, so first of all, one of the large projects, well, there's two large projects, I think, that have been entitled recently to large master plan developments that have, pretty significant industrial components as part of those projects. And you're talking Highway 60 West, just a few miles from the CSX intermodal facility. Yes. And at some point, that facility is going to be at capacity. Mm-hmm. And that industrial developer, if they want to stay in the business and they want to stay here in Polk County, they're going to be looking for more land. And if we've got an approved project, just a few miles up the road, I think we stand a good chance of tapping into that and benefiting from them, being right down the road. So are we going to be the, Intermodal Logistics Center 2.0? I don't know. But it certainly opens the door.
The odds are good. I mean, I think we're really good candidates for that. So we're still kind of, I think, teetering on the brink of falling into some real economic prosperity here. But you got to lay the groundwork, and the growth clears the path for that. If a city is not proactive when the county is growing around it, then what happens is you tend to get overrun and you don't develop, you lose the capacity to develop your own infrastructure and continue to effectively provide for your citizens. So, okay, now you're talking about the developments out on 60 made me think about what's been happening at our airport, which is also a part of the growth story of Lake Wales. So talk about that a little bit. The incredible number of investments and improvements that have been made. So talk about that a little bit.
Oh, good gosh. So, yeah, that's another one. And it doesn't get enough attention. Mm-hmm. So we, the city, have been investing millions in that airport, certainly over the last 10 years, really trying to lay the foundation And, most folks probably don't realize this, that while the city owned the airport, we didn't operate it. It had a private operator for, I don't know how long, 20 years?
Yeah.
I would say at least.
Mm-hmm.
And there just wasn't a lot of focus or investment in developing that airport.
Mm-hmm.
So, 10 years ago or so, the city took back operations of the airport, and we've been really focused on really economic development and expansion. It's just we are starting now decades later than our neighbors.
Yes.
So we've extended the runway. We've got the second longest runway in Polk County.
It's crazy, isn't it? And
It
just
is.
let me stop as a anecdotal here at the church that I pastor, High Point Church. We needed to have a business meeting with a builder not long ago who had a private jet and had to fly in from another state and was trying to pick out where to land. Now, a few years ago, we would have had to send him to Winter Haven or Bartow. So when he texted, he said, I need a runway. I need this long a runway. We had it. He was able to land right in Lake Wales. A few years ago, that wouldn't have been the case. So we are seeing a lot more private commercial flights into the city now.
We definitely are. I can tell you for fact certain our business jet traffic has doubled.
Yeah.
The daily operations counts, they call them, the takeoff and landings have doubled. We're getting over 30 a day.
Right.
In some cases.
It's nuts, isn't it? And I'll bet you 5 years ago, 30 a month would have been a good number for us.
It would have been. Mm-hmm. So, uptick in general aviation traffic, which is great. Mm-hmm. So we've done, we've constructed new taxiways out at the airport.
Yes.
For goodness sake, our fuel farm.
The fuel farm.
Wasn't adequate.
Yeah.
And it wasn't adequate. It didn't have the flow to fuel larger aircraft. Mm-hmm. So we've replaced even the fuel farm, and we have a fuel truck for the first time. Mm-hmm. And so what's happened, there's been an uptick in all of the general aviation traffic. I think it's all just about doubled over the last couple of years. And then we're getting renewed interest in businesses operating at the airport. So I think just over the last 12 months or so, we've had 3 or 4 new corporate, hangars constructed that have businesses operating out of them. So our overall economic impact of the airport is significantly higher, and I can't wait for the local economic impact report that gets generated annually for the airports. I can't wait for that number to come out this year.
Yeah, because last year it was awesome. It was well over double.
It was over double. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Right. So all of these things are important parts of setting in place groundwork for successful economic expansion. So that's about more jobs. And then the other complaint we often hear that growth helps with is there's more things to do. When I was first elected, people would come up to me and say, when do we get a Chick-fil-A? When do we get a this, that, or the other? That's fine. Most of the time they were half joking. But the fact is that, for a long time, those things were not close by. You had to go to Lakeland. You had to go to Winter Haven. So talk about some of the stuff we've seen happening in those. That's been we've seen a lot happen in our city recently. We
sure have. So, we have about a $26 million a year retail leakage here in Lake Wales. Yeah. About $26 million a year, which literally means people are leaving Lake Wales, and most of them are going to Winter Haven. Mm-hmm. So $26 million a year being spent in Winter Haven at their shops and restaurants that could be spent here strengthening our own economy. Mm-hmm. So I think, one of the things that we've all done together, for example, is, we hired a firm, Retail Strategies, to assist in that national retail recruitment. And so what you've seen is the result of their work is the Panera that's been constructed on North Highway, near the church here.
Yeah, on far away, like 2 miles from here.
They recruited, we've got the only Freddy's national chain in the entire county here. So they saw an opportunity in Lake Wales to invest, and they took it. And we've had several more, Mayor. Chipotle.
Of course, we've had Chili's for quite some time now.
We got Starbucks.
Yeah.
Have all recently been constructed. Yeah. And we're getting, we get inquiries on a regular basis, including from, and I do need to clear up a rumor. Mm-hmm. So a certain fast food chicken restaurant that isn't open on Sundays.
Yeah.
So they have been poking around. They've been looking for a couple of years now, but they have very, very, I'd say, narrow selection or site selection criteria. So they've been shopping for the last couple of years, but they have not landed on a location yet, but they've been trying. I suspect we're going to end up with one, but before too long. And again, I know that some of these national chains and these retail restaurants, or even fast food, they are employing people. Just the 2 restaurants that we know that Retail Strategies recruited for us, they created over 120 jobs.
Yeah.
Now, they may not be the highest paying jobs in the world, but for folks that are looking for work and for our college students,
entry level work,
it certainly is. There's certainly a benefit, but more importantly, what happens is it really just adds to the quality of life.
Yeah.
People want to live here.
Yeah. Yeah.
They want to live here when they have places to go and eat and shop.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the major benefits of, having some of this new kind of retail development happening on Highway 27. I think we're going to see a lot more.
Yeah. So those are pretty typical things that rise to the surface quickly. But we anticipated the growth was coming. When you came on board as the city manager, you took some pretty critical planning steps that we acted on as the commission, things like a 180 utility service area. So when we talk about growth management, planning is so critical, and I think it's something we've done well. So the 180 utility service area, the multimodal fees, the land use, the land planning. So let's talk a little bit about that, because those are issues that people often don't think about. But let's discuss each one of those. So as I remember, the first one that we dealt with was the multimodal fee here in the city of Lake Wales. So what is a multimodal fee, and then what has it done for us here?
Sure. So again, going back to mobility. Your typical, and Lake Wales did not have one. The county, the other cities, it's pretty common to have a transportation impact fee.
Right.
So all the other cities around us all have transportation impact fees. And so when a new home's built or a new commercial building, those builders pay an impact fee to the city to pay for expansions of services to offset or mitigate the impacts of that growth. And so for the transportation impact fee, what that means is that's money that comes in that can be spent on new roads and road improvements. That's all well and good, except we in Lake Wales, we're focused on more than just cars on the road. We're focused on moving people, not just vehicles.
Yeah, peddlers and pedestrians. I'll never forget it.
That's exactly right. And so we did things a little differently. So we number one created a mobility plan. So we looked at the entirety of the city limits and looked at our kind of transportation network, and we said, okay, what improvements do we need to make? So we created a plan that was focused on roadway improvements and sidewalk improvements and multimodal trails and transit. And then we use that as the basis to create really a mobility fee or a multimodal impact fee. Mm-hmm. And so every new home, every new building, or every new structure that's built in Lake Wales they pay a multimodal transportation impact fee. The difference between ours and our neighbors is that theirs can only be spent on road improvements, whereas ours can be spent on anything that moves people. Yes. All the things that I just mentioned, transit, sidewalks, bike lanes, multimodal trails, streets, pretty much anything that moves people. So every new home that's been built at this point has paid into that impact fee fund, and we use that. We are using that money now for all sorts of things, right? So we help supplement our grants for our trail construction, for example, the multimodal fees. And, this Lake Wales Connected, this is tens of millions of dollars to see this thing all the way through.
Yes, yeah.
So we use that to supplement our bond proceeds and our CRA revenues that come in. We supplement because essentially a lot of that work, or at least a big ticket projects within Lake Wales Connected are all essentially complete streets or somehow transportation related, believe it or not. And so we supplement those other revenue sources with this impact fee to get all this work done. That's how we've been able to sustain this up until this point. So the new folks moving to town, or at least, or the builders anyway, they're contributing toward implementing our Lake Wales Connected plan.
Sure. So when you walk down a trail, and it's not just an asphalt trail, it's a well-landscaped trail with shade trees. That's because we have a multimodal fee here.
That's exactly right.
And because people are moving here.
That's exactly right.
You know, so the fact that you can go out on a cool Saturday morning and put your kid in a stroller and enjoy a tree-lined walk, that's all a result of the multimodal fee.
It absolutely is. And, you know, for visitors, you know, these trails have really become an economic engine around the country, and certainly here in Florida. And it already is, but it's going to continue to attract more visitors to Lake Wales who just want to be on their bikes and what did you call it?
Peddlers and pedestrians.
Peddlers and pedestrians. You know, they're going to come visit Lake Wales, and they're going to spend money in our local economy, and they're going to stay in our hotels and eat in our restaurants, just so they can experience our trail system. And that's something I think we should and will start, you know, marketing a little more aggressively, so we can bring those folks to town. They spend their money, and then they'll go back home. So
that was a part of the planning that we did early on to make sure that we could harness the benefits of the growth that was going to come. You can reap the benefits, or you can simply let growth run over the top of you. Right. Another step I remember early on was the enactment of a 180 utility service area. And to me, that's even bigger and more important. So talk about that one.
So the Chapter 180 utility service area it's a boundary that is well outside our city limits. And we're basically stating to all the other entities around us that we are going to be the ones to provide utilities anywhere inside this area. And it's a pretty large area. I mean, granted, our utility service area is probably 55,000 acres.
Yeah.
Now, it was never meant as, you know, to say, okay, we are just going to fill up all 55,000 acres. For me, it was really more of kind of a defensive maneuver, because we kind of get the first right of refusal if a project's coming in, and maybe one of our neighbor cities like Winter Haven.
Yes.
If they're close enough, you know, Winter Haven could just as easily have annexed that land and provided utilities. So we enacted that Chapter 180 utility service area boundary, at least to give, you know, some pause to developers and the other municipalities around us to say, no, it's in our service area. You know, we need to be the ones to serve them.
Sure.
And I'll tell you, because the city's been burned in the past.
Yes. Yeah.
They have been burned in the past. You know, and I believe there was even some litigation previously, you know, prior to my tenure as the city manager, but between Lake Wales and Winter Haven.
Yes.
For this very reason. And so Winter Haven, they're still aggressively annexing.
Yes, very aggressively.
Very aggressively. They're annexing east toward us. They're annexing south.
And not just Winter Haven.
Not just Winter Haven. No, but they were the ones, I'll tell you, that quite honestly, I'll say scared me the most, because the reality is, had we not had the Chapter 180, there would have been a lot more land in Lake Wales that would have been annexed into Winter Haven and developed. So the growth that people don't want would have occurred anyway, just like you said.
Yes.
But we would have had no control in the project, no say in how it's designed or developed, and we certainly wouldn't have, you know, reaped any of the financial benefits that comes with the growth in our tax base. And we would have still had to deal with the traffic and everything else that it brings. So that was really kind of the first move, and it's been successful. We've had some large projects approved in Lake Wales that easily could have been part of Winter Haven or some other cities.
So our city, again, when we growth management, maximize the benefits, minimize the impacts. Well, if we don't act proactively like this, we get all of the impacts and none of the benefits.
That's exactly right. So
again, 5-6 years ago, we were already thinking, hey, this is coming. We know it's coming. We have got to be prepared for it. And yes, we on the commission have seen the direct result of that forward thinking. People have to talk to us first. I remember early on in my tenure that the running joke was Lake Wales City footprint looks like a flying spaghetti monster. But that conceptual footprint makes a lot of sense. It's very orderly. And again, it gives us a chance to control what is happening around us. Not only that, but to capture revenue that would be lost. And those utility service fees are substantial. Just people don't realize how much that means to the services we provide. And when cities don't act proactively, they keep losing revenue. They keep losing. You won't have a good police department. You won't have good firsters. By the way, let's talk about that. Lake Wales has maintained a very high level of public service in that arena for a city our size, right?
Oh, so we're all extremely proud and have been proud of our public safety and what they offer us.
Yeah.
You know, our fire department offers what's called Advanced Life Support ALS. They're basically dual certified firefighters and paramedics. I think we're at about close to 70% of our firefighters are also paramedics, and they're no different than the guys that show up on an ambulance. There's only 3 municipalities in the entire county that have ALS service. And so that's Lake Wales, Lakeland, and Winter Haven.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And again, these are things I know that in the last year we've bought a new fire engine. We've expanded one of our fire stations. We're getting ready to build a third fire station. We've expanded our police force. We've been able to pay them better. And all of those things, again, possible because we have taken the lead, taken control of the growth that is coming our direction.
We absolutely have, and our citizens are going to benefit, and they're going to receive now. They're going to benefit from an even higher level service from our public safety. You know, our first responders, fire and police, they're going to be on scene within a couple of minutes of when you call them.
Yeah.
Versus, you know, if you're out in the county, you don't know where the ambulance is coming from.
Yeah.
You know, and not to disparage them, it's a large county. And, you know, it might take them 10 or 15 minutes to get to where you are.
Right.
If you're in Lake Wales, you know, we're going to have a paramedic or a police officer to you within just a couple of minutes. And, you know, I'd be remiss if I did not mention that, you know, our police department works extremely proud of the work that they're doing, and they're, you know, fully credentialed, you know, under the Florida Commission of Law Enforcement, accreditation, so fully accredited. And so, you know, we were the first in the county to implement, you know, body cameras, you know, for example. And so now you see all the other ones kind of, you know, coming in. I don't want to say behind us, but they're certainly after us.
In future episodes of The Mayor and the Manager, we're actually going to invite our chief of police and our new fire chief to join us. And I'm sure they'll share more about we all know how important that is, but how I think this growth that, again, has been well managed has benefited us. So another part of it before we wrap up today is about the planning that you do, the codes that you put in place. We really don't have time to give Lake Wales Envisioned the attention that we need to right now. But we've been, as a city, even before Lake Wales Envisioned, trying to think about our codes, all of that. And Lake Wales Envisioned was the impetus to enacting even better codes. So again, when it seems like a ton of construction is happening, why should people in Lake Wales have confidence that the construction quality is good and that we're managing it well? Talk about that. Maybe you can mention Lake Wales Envisioned and how that happened with us. But
so, do you want to get into a lot of detail about Lake Wales Envisioned, or just the overview of what it is?
The Lake Wales Envisioned, we'll give a whole episode to maybe in the future. Okay. But one of the reasons we did it was we wanted to make sure that we were bringing in the highest level quality development that we could. And that was already kind of taking place, but it helped us enhance that a bit. I know that you and I have talked about the fact that, you know, we hear huge numbers, 15,000 houses, 20,000 houses, and that's not really the reality. And I don't think that people know the demands that we make as a city of Lake Wales as compared to what happens in other municipalities or in the county. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So a couple things. Let me address just briefly some of the growth numbers I think that we've all seen in the newspapers and watched on the news over the last few years. So we continue to be one of the slowest growth cities in all of Polk County.
Yeah.
And that's reality. And I know it seems like there's a lot going on. You drive down Buckmore Road and it's all new.
Yeah.
But what it really looks like is over the last 6 years, and these haven't all even been constructed. This is just permitted.
Mm.
Over the last 6 years, we've only permitted, I think, 1,076 or so single-family residences and 242 multifamily. So we're around 1,300 over a 6-year period. And if you go back 5 years, there were some news articles saying our population was going to triple. We were going to be 50,000.
Traffic Geddon. The whole world's coming to an end.
Yeah, none of that's happened. We've it's actually the growth is coming, and it's come at really a really manageable rate. And so we have not exploded by any means, but we know it's coming, and that's why we've done all of this earlier planning and proactive preparation so that when it does, really start to come to fruition, we know what's going to happen before it actually happens. And we're not just being reactive and trying to respond.
Yeah. And we do have, I know we did enact all new building codes in the last year that really are, I think, maybe the highest demanding codes in the county.
No, I think I'm going to tell you, I feel pretty certain that we've got the highest standards now in terms of our neighborhood design in the entire county.
Yeah.
To the degree now in which, a lot of the typical developers don't really necessarily want to build here right now. And I think our citizens are okay with that.
I think they are. I think we all are. I think that we know that you can't just slam the door on growth, even though many of us might want that to happen, but you can demand a little bit more. There's always this fine balance between respecting private property rights and wanting the people who have owned this land and been a part of our community to be able to, to benefit from that ownership, while at the same time making realistic requests of the people that are going to move in and develop here. And that's always the tightrope that we walk. But
you're certainly right. And so, as you mentioned, the city commission, we adopted several code changes over the last couple of years. Now, to be, completely just upfront about everything, some of the developments that folks are seeing being constructed today may have been approved 4 or 5 years ago before we had, and our standards were still pretty good.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, compared to a lot of our neighbors. I know that folks realize that, but there are still, your kind of conventional neighborhoods that you've seen being built over here in Polk County over the last 10, 20 years, but we've certainly evolved. And so we've changed our land development regulations. Our city commission has proved this, such that the neighborhood designs are going to be of the highest quality. Mm-hmm. While, the national builders will still, they're still going to be able to come in and build the homes that they build. But now they're going to have more walkable neighborhoods with more functional, green space, and street trees, and really taking a lot of the elements that we're in our Lake Wales Envisioned plan. Quite honestly, we've taken those kind of those crucial elements and infused those into our land development regulations and our new neighborhoods. And so what we're going to see are mixed use, mixed housing type, beautiful neighborhoods. Yeah.
Okay. So before I forget to say this, all of these initial episodes are just to introduce you folks to big picture items, and they are obviously going to raise more questions that you may want to learn more about. And we're happy to give that information. That's what the Mayor and the Manager podcast is about. So send us your questions. I'm thinking as you're talking about this, another guest that we may want to invite on is our planning department and do a deep dive, because you said some of these things that they're seeing come online now were approved 3 or 4 years ago. And a lot of people don't understand that it's a long process and there's a lot of hoops, and they may be interested. There may be folks listening to our podcast that really would like to know more about what is the process, and so we can have one of our planning department head come in and spend some time answering those questions. So again, before I close today, I want to remind you, please do send us your questions. These first few episodes, we're just laying the groundwork, but we wanted this to be more interactive, and we will take time in future episodes to respond to questions and to bring guests on that you may be interested in. One more thing before we close that comes up is, what about natural resources? As this growth is not only taxing our infrastructure, taxing our natural resources. And the big one is water. The big issue in Polk County and all of Florida right now is water use. And this is another thing I think we've handled very well in the city of Lake Wales, all the way up to this year, and just recently made some big moves that are going to really help our city. So why don't you talk with us about water usage and how we've managed that? I should have Commissioner Thompson here. He's like the water czar, but I can't talk to him like this, so I'll have to let you talk about it.
Okay, well, I'll try not to make this too long-winded. But because really the rest of the county really has been growing a lot for the last 20 years, Lake Wales has not. So we've had a lot more available capacity in our water use permit than what folks realize. And so because we've had that capacity, we were able to kind of take a step back, and we might need to do a whole section, maybe on this water, because it can get really detailed.
Well, we can bring out our utilities department to talk about that.
We really could. But so we had the available capacity. And first, let me clarify. When we talk about water, folks need to understand that the upper Floridan aquifer really covers the entire state of Florida.
Yeah.
And virtually the entire state of Florida and South Georgia. Mm-hmm. So it's not like we've got just, one bowl of water under Lake Wales. So it's not that we're running out of water here in Lake Wales. We're really talking about the permitted capacity.
Yeah. Each city in the county is allowed to pump a certain number of gallons per day.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And in just kind of little fact for everybody, our entire 55,000 acre utility service area that we talked about earlier, the municipal permitting and water supply only accounts for 13% of all of the permitted water in that entire area.
Crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
So a lot of it's private water. Yeah. A lot of it's agriculture, quite honestly.
So at the time, we've taken steps as we developed. We've placed requirements on new developers to make sure the water is used well and conserved well. I know we became one of the first municipalities in the county. What is it? The Star?
Water Star. We were actually the first. Now, I do have to say that our neighbors here were following, a lot of the steps. Mm-hmm. But they didn't require the third party certification. Yes. So every new home that gets built in Lake Wales has to be Water Star compliant. Yeah. So, all the appliances are water efficient, the landscaping, the irrigation, pretty much everything to conserve water.
Yeah. So again, I think it's just those kind of things are important for our folks to know that we're well under our maximum pumping capacity, and recently have made some acquisitions that are going to help. You want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I'll be happy to talk about it. So, we recently, we haven't closed yet, that we've approved the contract. The county's approved the contract. We're supposed to close in March, and we're going to be purchasing the county's water system up in Waverly and their wastewater system, quite honestly. And the benefit to us is they have available capacity in their current permit that's going to get transferred over to the city of Lake Wales. And that's going to give us more capacity, continue to provide our citizens and the growing community, water. And so we run growth projections. And so far, and we've been pretty conservative, and we've even been behind those projections for the last 6 years, which is a good thing. Yeah. Which means our water is going to last us, a lot longer than I think what we even, estimated.
Which we're already looking
5 years ago. And we were already looking good, right? And we haven't had the growth that I think maybe folks think we have. Yeah. So we've had available water, and we're still continuing to, implement some strategies to conserve water, to both conserve and get more capacity. So we're doing things like pursuing what's called land use transitions now, where when these orange groves are being annexed into the city limits, they have grove wells. You got to irrigate those trees. Mm-hmm. And so through the land use transition process, we're going to be able to convert those grove wells and those permits and add those to our permitted capacity the way it should work. So we think we're in pretty good shape there. We always have the option, because we are members of the Polk Regional Water Cooperative. Though we are members, but we have not joined the billion with a B, $1 billion, Southeast Wellfield project. While we may, Lake Wales is likely going to have to join that project at some point in the future, but we don't need to do that until it's time. And I think we still got several years left before we need to jump on board with that. And the reason for us to delay that is it is so costly. We don't want our current citizens and our customers having to pay for a project in water that they really don't need.
Yeah, and it's going to be very costly.
It's going to be very costly, but we're certainly, we're keeping an eye on all options. As you well know, you were the mayor. We pursued drilling our own Lower Floridan aquifer deep well, right? I mean, we even went down that road until we found it wasn't going to be productive. Yeah. But I think we made some very responsible steps, in my opinion, to see what options were out there before we just signed on with the water cooperative.
And I think it's just important for our folks to hear us talk about this. I want them to know that we're always working to do what we think is best for the city of Lake Wales. So again, I wished that I were able, I'm not because of sunshine laws, to talk to Commissioner Thompson, but he's been kind of the water czar for us. He's done a great job representing our city on the Water Cooperative Board.
Yes.
Okay, well, I think that will bring us to a close to this episode. Again, I always want to remind you folks, please send us your questions. We're just laying the groundwork and trying to address a few issues in general, but we want to hear from you, and thank you for joining us again. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Mayor and the Manager. The goal of this podcast is to keep you up to date on all that is happening in the great city of Lake Wales. To that end, we would love to take questions from you and take the time to answer them. So if you have any questions, just click on Submit a Question in the description above this podcast.